started, and we'll jump in. So is everyone from packaging tonight? Yeah, we are. And everyone else went asynchronous to work on their designs. Okay, cool. No worries. So, all right, guys, then I think we can just use this room to kind of go into it. So hopefully you're doing okay. Let's jump in. Because I wanted to take some time tonight to talk to packaging design while the rest of the class was working on their t-shirt designs. But it looks like we could just jump right into it. And I wanted to talk for at least a good like 45 minutes or so, and just see where everyone is on their designs. And then for the remainder of the evening, we can start working on making adjustments and setting up functions and things of that sort. Okay, so we'll go that direction. And if folks from digital illustration join us this evening, then we'll kind of catch up and mention a few things there and then go in that direction. Okay, so we'll get going there. Oscar, hey, how's it going? Just really quick, most of the folks that are online tonight are from packaging, but tonight is technically an asynchronous day, so that if anyone needs to, on digital illustration, need to work on specifically their t-shirt designs, their tracing, they can do so. But if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat, and then we can start addressing those questions. And then after about I would say about 7:30, then we're gonna leave it asynchronous so that everyone can work for the remainder of the evening. So that's the game plan there. Okay, but we'll use this room for all questions for all classes, and then we'll go and then we'll I will basically log off and then continue on into the evening just to kind of make sure that everyone has some time to work. Okay, so so let's go ahead and we'll start off with packaging design. So just really quick, for those folks that are that got to present last week, we'll do a check-in with everyone in the class, and then we'll see where everyone is, and then we'll make some recommendations, some suggestions. The class will input, share some thoughts, suggestions on how to improve the design, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So we're gonna kind of reverse a little bit, start with packaging, and then for a couple of us that are here from digital illustration, tonight's an asynchronous night. So if there's something specific that you have a question on regarding the Mickey t-shirt design or tracing, so that would be basically you, Elizabeth. You can type it in the chat. But tonight's going to be an asynchronous night so that everyone can kind of work on their designs, ask any questions that they might want, that they have about a certain part of the design or the tracing. And then for the rest of the evening, they get to work on their t-shirt designs, and then we'll regroup on Tuesday to kind of review from there. So that's that'll be our game plan in that particular format. Okay. So if there's a specific question, you have my full attention, and we'll cover it, and then and you can type it in the chat, and we'll go from there. But I'll be working with also packaging with the packaging design class as well to kind of see where their designs are. So we'll have everything in this room. But if you have a specific question for digital illustration, for Mickey, for tracing, then you can go ahead and type it in, and then we'll go in that direction. Okay. So, but tonight will definitely be asynchronous, and we'll definitely ask any questions that you might have and go in that direction. Okay. All right. Exciting. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the packaging designer. So we'll do a couple of quick updates and see. Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, totally. If there's any questions, come on back in. If for whatever reason, let's say the room is no one's in the room, or I'm away from the room, feel free to email me, and it's linked to my phone, and then I'll be able to respond via email or come back onto the session so that we can answer that question. So email is kind of like text messaging. It goes directly to my phone like a text message. So that's the format there when you email my school email. Okay. So yeah, this will be great. Okay. So let's jump in with packaging design. For packaging designers, oh yeah, totally, Elizabeth. Yeah. Does anyone in packaging design want to go first in terms of sharing their designs and seeing where they're at and how they're doing? And then we'll kind of see where we're at. Feel free to type it in the chat if you want to, if you would like to share. If we can go across the board this evening, that's no problem. but we'll start with packaging design. And then Emily, tonight we have tonight is an asynchronous night. So so what's going to happen is that packaging design will be we'll all be in the same room sharing and asking questions about the project. So and then in about 45 minutes, then we'll basically let everyone go independent and work on their designs. So we'll use that time this evening to ask any questions that anyone might have for whatever particular thing. But it will be an asynchronous night this evening, and we're going to use like the next 45 minutes just to answer questions regarding specific parts of the project, and then I'll log off, and then the rest of the class will basically work on their t-shirt designs, and then we can go there. Okay, but we'll have everything in the same room just so that we can just save on the time and not have to separate, and have it in the recording too. I think that'll be helpful too for packaging design as well. So we'll do it in that regard. Okay, so that'll be our plan this evening. And then forgive me if I repeat it, but I know that some folks are connecting, so we'll go in that direction and set that up. Okay. So yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll go with packaging design. And again, if you just joined us, guys, digital illustration tonight will be an asynchronous night. So we're basically, I wanted to come in for the first hour of class just to kind of connect, answer any questions that you might have regarding the project, any specific aspects of the Mickey tracing or the t-shirt design. And then after about 7:30, then I'll be away, and then the rest of the class can work asynchronously on the project, but that's essentially where we're going to go for this evening. Okay, sounds good. Okay, all right, so then let's jump in. Katya, I see here that you had a couple of updates on your design, so let's see where we're at. And if anyone in digital illustration or packaging have a specific question on their project, please type it in the chat, and then we'll go according to the order of the questions if there's something specific that I can answer for you. Okay, but Katya, we'll have you go first because I know there's some updates on your coffee packaging design. So let's go ahead and let's talk about it. So yeah, whenever you're ready.
Alrighty. Hi everyone. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Cool. So I think it was on Tuesday, we chose these two designs, and then I had an idea to kind of combine both of them, and this is kind of what I came up with. And then I also added the original design. Oh, and I found out the typeface. It's Avenir Next.
Avenir, yes. Okay, awesome. Modern typeface. It has a nice round. It has a lot of range, that particular font, so that's a good choice.
Yes, and then for the sides, I came up with these 4 concepts, and I kind of got inspired by these 2 Swiss designs.
Okay, awesome. So then can we take a look at the first 3, and is it the first 2 starting from the left, or?
It was this one that the class chose on Tuesday. So the first one and the middle one.
Oh, okay, the first one in the middle. And then we kind of went with the third one on the right there to experiment and sort of combine them as they were.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take a peek. Do you have a favorite out of these 3 from the comments and changes from last time? Any particular ones that you're kind of going towards?
I think I've always liked this one because it kind of looks similar to the original one. But now that I made this third one, I'm kind of going back and forth with the first one and the third one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I do kind of gravitate between first and third, and it makes sense because there's red and there's color and there's a focal point, so there's a bit more contrast happening in those.
Yeah.
And so it is definitely standing out a bit more. So that's something that is definitely making note for me. Could we delete the one in the middle just to kind of, or move it off to the side so we can kind of compare the 2, the left and the rights, and then just kind of get a little bit of a visual for it. Because I know that the one on the right was sort of an adaptation. And yeah, I think, you know, that first one seems to still be kind of standing out for me, the one on the left. Um, and in terms of for the one on the right, I feel like it could work. I wonder though if the beans or the number of beans maybe it could be reduced.
Oh,
Almost
okay.
almost like the because I like how you're saying like it's creating that structure, but I think the original version of that one of the design on the right was it was more it was I think I don't recall it originally having any beans in the background as it were. It was like sort of like Ness and then cut off, and then we have the cafe on the bottom there, and then we added the pattern. I like the pattern. I think maybe the pattern could be maybe significantly reduced just
Okay.
to kind of make room for the nest and the cafe to kind of stand out. Because I
Mm,
feel like the cup and the pattern are sort of turning into like a bit of that focal point, and I totally get that. And there needs to be the hierarchy, but I feel like it's dominating, and I think that what I liked about the original design from Tuesday was that the Nescafe was the focal point a bit more,
okay.
and it was the largest thing, and it had and it sort of was sort of fun and minimalist, and the fact that it was sort of cut off at some point. So I probably would want to see maybe less of the beans on the one on the right,
Mhm.
and see kind of following 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You do have a rule of odds, like anything that's 3, 5, 7, or 9 will always look more interesting dynamically.
Mhm.
So I think there were 9 beans there. I would play with 3, 5 beans.
Okay.
And because it's called the rule of odds, an odd number of something will always kind of force you into asymmetrical in a sense. And so that I would love to see like maybe 3 or 5, maybe 7, just to kind of see what number of like the odd number of beans will work for the design, if that helps.
Mhm.
Um, that's sort of like a principle that I always come back to, is that rule of odds. So maybe 5, perhaps 3 or 5 could be the particular range there. Um, and now my eye is going towards the typography. So Avenir is a good sans serif, and so it does have a nice structure to it. I've used Avenir for a couple of projects in the past when we sold product. I used to freelance at one point too, and I think it was I forget the name of the brand, but it's a kids brand at Target, and it's very modern and super cute, very clean and minimalist. They're like the Apple of kids products, and
Oh, cute.
and their name totally eludes me, but they have, oh my goodness. But I did freelance there for a bit, and they would always use Avenir, and Avenir was the font of choice. Like they always told me never change Avenir. It was always the font that people would go to. So meaning that it was a high quality font that they wanted to maintain for that sort of modernist look and feel.
Mm.
So that's a good choice for it. And so I don't know, Colleen, it could be Tyson, it could be Play School. Literally, if I were to walk out and look, I have some products from there as well. Um, but it has like a white background, and it has like multiple characters, but not Tyson, not Play School. I'm sure I'm sure in 30 seconds, if I run out, I can look it up. Um, but that font that they normally would use is an Avenir font.
Okay.
Um, I don't mind these two being a test round, Katya.
Okay.
We can try these as a potential option. I think part of my eye would like to see, and I'll use my tools here, is a center alignment of some sort with and where are my tools here? Um, with the lettering, and specifically, I believe with the word choice, because I think the word choice is not perfectly centered with the word tasters, and it's not a bad critique. It's just it's more of like an alignment. So typically when I look at a particular design, my eye will always, and I'm trying to find my annotation. And oh, it's because I'm not sharing your screen. Okay, that's probably why. So let me open up my annotation tools. There we go. And so what happens is that I always like to look at my type. And for type, I always try to do an alignment. So I always say, like, is instant coffee aligned towards the center? Is taster, the word choice, the word house blend? If all those lines are aligned to a center, then they become more unified. So it's sort of, it goes back to poster design a bit. Whenever certain letters or fonts are lined up to the left, flush left or flush right, or even in the center, it creates a sense of unity or structure, and it looks intentional and it looks like it's controlled. And so when I see that the focal point is developed and your Nescafe is looking like it's controlled and everything, I always sort of zoom in on the font towards the end to make sure that even the lettering has a sense of control. So my order of thinking is, graphically, is it asymmetrical? And then the second thing I do is I say, okay, well, is typographically, is the type looking controlled, meaning something lines up with something else, whether it's left, middle, or right, flush, and then the font selection. Like, are we contrasting fonts? Are we contrasting the font in sizes or in the actual font itself, or both, or maybe contrasting the font using colors, but it's still using the same principle as contrast. And I'm sort of zooming into the type in the text and looking at it with a bit more of a finer eye, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like different modalities. It's kind of like packaging overall. And then if it feels pretty controlled, then I zoom in on the type and I say, okay, is the type looking aligned, controlled? Okay. Oh, and then I zoom in on the style and I say, oh, is the style looking controlled? Is the style appropriate for the project? And then if those two things are being answered, then I say, okay, cool. Let's look at any secondary graphics that we want to go for from there. So if I'm being nitpicky, that's a good sign. That means that it's moving in the right direction and it's looking relatively like complete conceptually, I would say.
Thank you.
So yeah, no, it's you're doing great. You're doing a wonderful job. So I would probably do an alignment. Okay, so for the right and to the left, so aligning the type so that it kind of lines up to the center. So if your box is here on the left, and making sure that the type is aligned to the center from the boxes or from the overall package would be ideal. And because I kind of see this imaginary alignment happening in the center. So if the type's lining up fully towards the entire center, you can see that choice is a little bit to the right, and then tasters and choice and house blend and pure coffee look a little bit to the right compared to that center red line. And can you kind of see the subtle shift of it almost?
Yes, yes.
So
Fix it too. I noticed it because I center aligned it with the tools, but I think because I kind of spaced out the letters, it kind of messed up the center alignment. So I would have to fix it.
oh yeah, and that could be as simple as copying and pasting that text box and having tasters be one text box, right?
Mhm.
And then choice being the separate. So they're not one, but they're rather two separate sort of words that have their own sort of text box, as it were. And so that would fix that there. And that's happened to me before, where it's like I have a paragraph and line 1 is this, line 2 is that, line 3, and you could do it like that. And some people like to do one text box and then manipulate each line of it. I typically like to do the separate text boxes and have them be sort of like their own disconnected sort of entities, and then I just align them to the center and group them. So it just depends on your preference and what you feel the most comfortable with. Right there. And then when I look at the graphic on the right, I know you were going Brazilian. So was that Brazilian graphic challenging you? Was that turning into like, whoa, this might be a minute or two?
No, I wanted to do that, but then since the company began in Switzerland, then I found that it's better off to just stick with Switzerland, because then it would have a better connection, I feel like.
Good. Okay. So as long as you have a good justification for that and it aligns to the branding, then totally see where you're going. So they're not from Brazil, so we don't need to go there. is the sensibility. Okay, perfect. So then first thing is I like the patterns that you're creating, and I do like the sense of motion that's being done. And I find it interesting that you went Rammstein. Is that because it's sort of Swiss? It's the Swiss style. Is this book cover sort of inspired by the Swiss era?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was thinking too. I just wanted to confirm that. Yeah, I think it's great. This is for new students. This is a good example of kind of like taking inspiration. You can't put a license or a trademark on a pattern, right? Like patterns are everywhere. So pattern is a pattern, and I think it's cute that you definitely use the bean as sort of like that continuation. So the connection of the Swiss style with the bean to kind of say two things at one time, I think is great. So yeah, my eye is really going towards that center second one, which is the radial.
This one?
Which is the second one from the left, but I just like the radial. I like radials generally. However, I just it's always good to kind of test it in a panel. So if it's going to be, you know, showcase on like a rectangular panel, or maybe something that is like a more triangular or pattern, because the coffee will get closed, let's say, from the top. I think that I would love to see it, but in terms of just the recreation of the patterns, I think these are looking pretty good overall. And was the bean modified in any way or cleaned up by any chance? Or is this the same bean?
It's the same bean. Yes.
Okay. No, it's totally fine. And I like it. I think I would love to see maybe these kind of mocked up and compare it onto like an actual package.
Oh, okay.
So I think we're ready to maybe get to like a 3-dimensional mock-up, and then start seeing it in like a sort of like a Frankenstein of a package, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So and we can kind of cover it for Tuesday. So I think that's moving in the right direction. Yeah, it's feeling pretty good. And then these are, I'm trying to think if there's any other comments, but no, I think you're good. I think you're moving in the right direction. And I'm trying to think if there's anything I would do to make any type of modification. I think for the pattern, now if I'm being nitpicky, that's a good thing, but I think I would like to see it onto the like a rendered package.
Okay.
And then we can go forward from there. So
Okay, cool.
nice. Yeah,
Thank you.
looking good.
Thank
Good
you.
job. No problem. Looking great. Right. I'm liking where it's going so far. Okay. Let's continue. I think last week when Ashley was taking the lead, there was a couple of us that got a chance to talk, but I didn't get to see it. But no matter, it's okay. So let's go down the list and see where everyone is in terms of their packaging design. And for those of us that just joined us from digital illustration, tonight's it is an asynchronous night, but I wanted to spend at least the first hour of class answering questions, talking to packaging design, and giving them feedback on their work, to which then for the last 2 hours of class, we'll be working independently on making those modifications. So if you have a question specifically about the Mickey drawing, or maybe something, a particular aspect of the t-shirt, feel free to type it in the chat, and then I'll go ahead and address those questions as we go forward. Okay. So moving on with packaging design, let's go ahead and let's take a look at, let's see, Kalena, let's go with you. I'm kind of curious to see how your conceptual direction got developed. And if you have a moment, if you want to share your screen, that's great. Or if you want to type in the chat what the status is, that would be great. But how's the packaging art coming along on your side? And I think we can definitely hear you. Okay, it looks like you're sharing. Okay. And I can hear you, but a little bit, but
my dog was being real loud.
oh, no worries. Now I can hear you. Okay, great. So let's take a peek. And do you have the conceptual directions available by any chance, Kalena?
I don't have them up right now, but I could try to find them.
Okay. let's take a look. Well, if it's there, that's great. I can pull them up on my side over here. I
Mhm.
just wanted to kind of do a comparison and see where we're going. But let's listen and let's take a peek. Where are we at? What are your thoughts? And what is the conceptual direction that we see here in front of us?
Well, I think I tried to make like just one of each of the directions to see which one would be the best to go for.
Okay, so we're looking at the front of the box, and these are some variations of what that front of the box could look like.
Mhm.
Okay, awesome. And I think if I recall, there were two conceptual directions that you were going for. Like one was a minimalist and another was sort of like illustration, sort of cute, I recall, right?
I think I had 4, and then this was just I was testing different ones.
Okay. And does this screen we see represent the 4 or
Yeah,
different
these
styles?
are the 4 different ones.
Oh, okay. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, go ahead. Let's take a peek and let's see what your thoughts are on each of these.
So I think actually this one is more like the first 2. I took the first 2 and tried to like take elements from just both of them. I came up with this shape that I really liked, while also using some of the color from the original boxes.
Okay, so these are the original colors for those boxes as well. Okay. Let's take a peek. Okay, and so in terms stylistically, is row 1 like one conceptual direction from the deck, if I recall?
Yes.
Okay. And can you remind me what that conceptual direction might be? Do you recall what that name was, or what the theme essentially was for that first conceptual direction? I'll try to see if I can pull it up over here too.
I don't remember what I called it, but I was trying to like take the original packaging and just simplify it sort of, and then also definitely change it up a little as well.
Okay. And is this the new logo that you're including into that as well?
Yes.
Okay. So definitely want to see if I could see the actual design. So because I want to kind of reference that a little bit. So for row 1 is one conceptual direction, row 2 is second, the third, and the fourth is what it sounds like.
I don't think I put them in order. I think I just did them like what I
Okay.
thought of. So I think row 2 is actually 4.
Oh, 2 is 4. Okay. So I see your link here. Let me see if I can open it up really quick, because I definitely want to see if I can get like a little bit of a comparison between the two. And okay, so one was like simple donuts. And okay, do you have a favorite? I'll ask that right now. Is there a favorite direction that you kind of go based on these rows?
I think my favorite is 2.
So the row 2 from the left, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So this one is, I'm trying to think here. Is that simple donuts? No, new tradition.
That was the one where I kind of just threw stuff together to make a 4th concept.
Okay. But it's sort of a combination of it, right? So simple, new traditions, experimental, cute, and futuristic, bright, stylized, and complex. Okay. So let's take a peek. And then the logo is also been updated as well.
Yeah, I also tried to simplify it.
Okay. So we have Katz gluten-free, but it's Mrs. Katz is the brand, right? Okay, so simple. So I want to see first the direction that you have. Okay. So it looks like row 1 and 2, it has a little bit of like a futuristic feel, which was like concept 4. But I'm always big on trying to reconnect that to the customer, right?
Mhm.
So who are we targeting specifically? Can you name who is the buyer essentially?
I would say like millennial and Gen Z.
Okay, so millennial Gen Z, and then from the looks of the document here, the words that describe the brand are new, simple, handmade, family-owned, experimental, cute. And then imaginary elements of art associated, simple colors, various icons, several types, cultural, traditional, on it there. So if just looking at the actual the packaging, like I like the dynamic lines, and I do like sort of like the angles happening there. The one thing that has me wondering is like, oh, typically when we have anything that looks sort of angled, it has a sense of movement, and it kind of feels a little bit on the futuristic side too, as well. So my concern is like, oh, well, if it's futuristic, then is that on brand or is that off brand based off the words that describe it, right? Like new,
Mhm.
simple, handmade, family-owned, experimental, it's cute. So it might work graphically, like graphically it might look interesting, and that's cool, that's a process. But then does it still connect back to the original brand, which is like, new, simple, handmade, family-owned, experimental, cute, gluten-free. So there's a bit of a healthy component to it as well.
Mhm.
And do we see that in the colors or in the directions overall, right? So it's kind of like, does the design work in relation to the brand instead of it working in sort of a vacuum compared to the other ones? Does that kind of make sense a little bit?
Yeah.
So then the packaging, I want to compare it to the old packaging. Inspiration. Do you have some inspiration that you're basing off the art from by any chance? Like, or packaging that's sort of inspiring to you?
Probably subconsciously, but I can't like recall a specific brand.
Yeah, I think what I would love to see is like maybe a couple of packaging concepts that kind of come back to the idea of new, simple, handmade, family owned, cute, right?
Mhm.
And kind of use that as sort of a guiding light or north star. I would love to see that because it feels a little bit like the designs were kind of like sort of self-driven in a way, a little bit loosely based on some of the concepts like futuristic, but um, but is there some are there some packaging or designs that are kind of inspiring you? I mean, conceptual direction is supposed to be kind of part of that world a little bit, but I think we might need to look at that document one more time and just see how those conceptual directions are broken down. Does that make sense? And I
Yeah.
think I know where you might be coming from, because as I'm thinking about it a little bit more and talking about it out loud, like you have some simple donuts, but like hexagons happening here, which are sort of like these angled lines within the packaging, but it's more in reference to like the actual box itself. So the actual box is a hexagon, which has these sort of dynamic sort of lines, right? I think you could go that direction and kind of do something with the second row. But I think the shape of the container for the box of the donuts would have to be like cut to that shape instead of drawn in. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
So like, I don't mind like the dynamic angled lines, but I would take it a step further and say, whoa, do we have a box shape that maybe mimics that? And can we do something with that box shape? And maybe what would that outline of a box look like? But it will still look kind of futuristic because you have these dynamic lines. But to keep it simple, it would have to look like something that is like a geometric shape, like we all know. So like, pentagon, right, hexagon, octagon, septagon, like if it was sort of like these shapes that we're really familiar with that are symmetrical, I think it'll look simple but modern at the same time. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
So I feel like that will be something that will kind of bring the piece out. So I don't mind, I'm all for angled forms and lines and whatnot within the brand, if it's on the brand or on brand, as they say. But if it's a little bit off the brand, then it's like, oh, well, what can we do to make it look simple, traditional, handmade as well? And is that as simple as using, simple geometric shapes or geometric shapes that everyone knows early in life that is considered simple? I'm feeling like those are some of the things that we can kind of bring into the design. So I feel like the shape of the package could probably could be pushed towards those hexagon, octagon, septagon shape or octagon shape, and then having as the actual form of a package rather than being drawn on a rectangular graphic. So I think that's kind of like my 2 cents there. It feels like the first 2 rows are futuristic, and we really want to try to go more for geometric and simple. And maybe the shape of the box has to change entirely to something that's more hexagon or octagonal shape, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of my 2 cents. If I had to kind of go back to it, and then looking at your doc here, if you were, yeah, so for simple tradition or simple donuts, I would say having the box shape be cut in a way that is sort of like a unique form would help. And then if we wanted to push it and further, then new traditions. I'm looking at the new traditions right now. I see the font is similar for Mrs. Katz from New Traditions. And I see a little bit of like a drawn in donut, but are these meant to be the final drawings, or are these shapes of the donuts meant to be like a substitute for a photo of a donut? I'm kind of curious about that.
They're placeholders.
Oh, okay, placeholders for like a photo of the donut,
Yeah.
right? Okay. So then I think if we were going to do a New Traditions version, so my comment would be like, if you were going to do a simple donut, I would go like draw a sort of hexagon or octagon shape and maybe see what that would look like in the colors of row 2, if that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
And you could literally just create that octagon, hexagon shape, and then add in the colors from row 2 here with the logo, see what that looks like in that sort of form. Because I'm imagining it as kind of like a 3-dimensional shape, but we're just looking at it overhead, like a camera facing down on it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I would love to see like a version of that. And then if you're, and if for the rectangular shape, then kind of like what you have for New Traditions, like, oh, is there like an all over pattern perhaps happening there? Or is it a solid color with like heavy focus on the font, kind of like what I see on the New Traditions there, followed by like a highlight of a graphic. So I think row 1 could definitely be like a New Tradition, and the New Tradition could be kind of like either it's a typographically led or having an all over pattern. And row 1, actually, is row 1 a reference to any conceptual directions by any chance, or is it more of the futuristic? It seems like. I think it looks more future.
I think I was taking just bits from the first 2 slides.
Oh, okay. So bits from the first 2 to kind of combine it. Okay. So yeah, I think you're being successful with the font. So with the rebranding, like Mrs. Katz, I do like that logo and the rebranding of that so far. I think it's off to a pretty good start, and I think it'll probably end up having some type of color, whether it's the outline or the font, or looking like a donut, or like color on the ring or something like that. And white on the inside with like the logo being a particular color in relation to the box. So I can see the logo kind of being like this geometric donut looking thing. But not literal, but more abstract donut, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I think that's looking pretty good and off to a pretty good start, I would say, for the most part. Okay, so I think practical action steps is, can we see it in a hexagon or octagonal shape with these graphics from row 1 or 2 and 2? And then could we potentially see like the new traditions direction maybe evolved a little bit more, where maybe there's an all over pattern on the package, and then the label and the name of the product is on the donut, right?
Mhm.
Because that's another thing too that I'm noticing as well, is that in the slide, the original package definitely has the name of the product, the logo, followed by the product name, which is donuts. So I would definitely add the word donuts to your packaging as we're evolving it, of course, a little bit further. But I know it's a rough concept, so these are Frankensteins. So I think with those changes, a shape, an outline, and definitely in including that word donut within the package, maybe for the next round, maybe we can see a photo, a transparent, like a photorealistic donut, just to get that much more of a feel for the product, or an actual photo of the product with like a transparent background. You can sort of fake the donut if that makes sense. I would love to see that for the next round next week when we connect. So there. Does that kind of help a little bit? Does that give you a little bit of a structure on where we can go next?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, overall, I think it's moving in the right direction. We're just making those modifications to kind of piece it together that much more. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Looking good. All right. Sounds good. Any other slides, or are these the ones? Okay. That looks like these are the ones in and of itself. Okay. Perfect. All right, looking good. Let's keep it going. So from packaging design, let's see, any updates that anyone would like to share? You can type it in the chat. Now, Josh, did we get a chance to see any of your designs, or maybe you shared it with the class, but maybe I wasn't available? Do you have anything that you could share on screen by sharing your screen, or taking a screenshot and putting it into the chat?
Let me see.
Let's take a look. And we'll see if I can make a modification here as well.
Okay.
Ooh, stand by one more second. While you're opening it up, let me get some a power supply here. I'm having some power issues. One second.
Okay.
I'm almost ready. Okay, so we are set. Power should be coming in. Okay, so Josh, let me go ahead and see if I can open up your file here. Now you're going with is it the flavoring, right? The bouillon
Yeah.
flavoring?
Yes.
There. Okay, and I wanted to take a moment. Now, did you get a chance to share when Ashley was leading on the other week, or is this the first time we're kind of seeing it as a class?
This is the first time.
Okay, so then can you kind of briefly break down a little bit about the brand and sort of like your thoughts of the old version versus the new, and why we want to repackage or rebrand the product in and of itself? Because it could definitely use a rebranding, but I just kind of want to get a quick little 10-second summary of what you think that might be.
Yeah. So for starters, this is what like the classic one kind of looks like. It's a little bit small. Let's see. So it's just it's simple. It's iconic, but at the same time, I think it's kind of outdated.
Mhm.
But like it having everything like this. So I decided for my for the style, I kind of wanted to go with like a more simplistic, something maybe along the lines of these two, or similar to it, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things that I was reading up on, it was the two main focal points about that they were trying to get across was how simple it is and how easy it is. So I was
Mhm.
trying to go with that for the minimalist design because of how simple and everything how this works.
So the chicken, this product is designed to make it simple to season food or season certain meats and things of that
Add
sort.
flavoring and like if you don't have the time to like do everything like from scratch, so you don't have time to make a stock or anything like that. It's just like a quick, simple additive.
Okay. And have you tried the product yourself at any point? Are you
Yeah.
are like a fan? Okay. And you were gonna say yes.
We kind of just have because it's like unless you make it out, you don't really have time to just add stuff like that. So for my family, we use it a lot in like rice or to quickly flavor a soup.
Okay. So it is convenient and it is quick, and but at the same time you're feeling like it's not it's not as effective of packaging because it looks so classic is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so are you going to, it sounds like you're rebranding or sort of resetting the font for the brand itself. So kind of doing like a logo type as it were, right? Okay. And logo type meaning it's like looking more like a well, it is a typeface, but you're using a little bit more of a modern typeface. Okay. Now typography, have you taken typography by any point at any point, or is this kind of like your first shot at sort of like a rebrand and or trying to like modify a logo type and make it into like a logo in and of itself? Is this sort of the first time doing that, or have you done logos in the past?
I've done it for the typography class that I took with Gardosh.
Okay.
But other than that, this is my first time really trying it not as an assignment, but like as my own in a sense.
Okay, perfect. And it looks like for this concept that you're working on, and I'm trying to pull up your file, forgive me, and it's running a little bit slow on my side, just trying to open it. So I'm trying to get a little bit of visual for it, but I'm glad you put your concepts there on the left. So from what I'm seeing here, it looks like you're trying to sort of recreate that the lower left one, which is color strip on the right on the top, and then the bottom is we have negative space, which is like a typographic direction, as it were. Okay, sounds good. So I'm starting to see a little bit of that, and maybe you can walk us through it. Like, what are your thoughts? What's your thinking process? And just kind of walk us through a little bit of where you're at right now.
So where I'm at right now, for the product itself, there's technically like there are 3 different iterations, and those are just different flavors itself. So the one that I just chose for now is the chicken one, and it's just they all have corresponding colors. So we have 3 of them. We have the chicken base, we have a tomato soup base, and then we have a beef base. If I remember correctly, the chicken is the green one that we see. The tomato one is just like a reddish, not very like saturated, but a bright red. And then the beef one is like a almost brown color.
Okay. So based on what I'm seeing here, it definitely looks like we have this sort of like, let's try to go with more of a simplified look. You're going chicken and you're kind of using more graphic icons, like more silhouettes. Are you thinking about doing a silhouette, or are you thinking of doing more of a typographic approach for this design?
I wasn't really, I'm not 100% sure on it yet. I was hoping, since I'm sharing it right now, what the classmates will think. Because I was either thinking of keeping it somewhat like this, making it a silhouette, or just scratching the idea and just putting in color and like making a chicken.
Okay, so I think a couple things. I'm a big believer in comparisons. So so for me, I'm always like, oh, let's see it and let's test it out, right? And probably what I would love to see is probably three things. One, I love the fact that you have like the different font options on the right of your screen there, right? You have what looks like the, like a sort of like sans serif, a serif, a script, almost to the right of that green band there. And that's great. That's working pretty good. But I feel like we can definitely experiment a little bit more on those options. Like for example, like when it comes to the product and the packaging, typically the first thing you want to see is like the name of the product, what it is, because we only have like seconds to say what it is, right? So chicken bouillon is definitely one of those things where it's like, it's a very specific product and it adds flavoring, right? So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm looking for flavoring or bouillon, then I'm gonna look in a section where it's, obviously in that aisle where there is flavoring. And then the next question would be, is like, oh, what do the other packages and other flavorings look like, right? Like, do they all have photos of the food, or do they not have photos of the food, right? Is it just one brand, or is it multiple brands? And what do those other brands look like, and how do they all compete with each other? Okay. So just looking at the deck here, I know that you have a little bit of history on the Nor Bouillon brand. So I just want to kind of get a little bit of history off of it. And hopefully the slides will give me some information. I want to get to the names of the actual brand and like the words that actually describe it. And it's running a little bit more. It's 1838, Carl Henrik Knorr, high quality food. And the words that describe the brand you're seeing here are cube, simple, flavorful, quick, iconic, and food. And then outline, colors, food, cooking, animals, and title. Okay, I see where that's going. Okay, so, and then for your inspiration, you have your inspiration on screen there. And most of the inspiration is mostly typographic with no icon. So I see where you're going with that. I think for at least concept number one is that we want to see a version purely typographic. Okay, so let's actually like start with like the lower left, like that concept, right? We have a color bar, we have the name of the product, and then we have chicken bouillon and probably like the flavoring and the details of the product, if that makes sense, right? So literally what I would first do is recreate that packaging on the lower left of your screen there, which is, it says like Altmel and really
think he got kicked.
I was gonna say, did Zoom stop working for anybody else? Everything froze, and then I was like, I'm gonna log out. And I came back on.
Yeah, everything froze, and then he just like got
Disappeared?
booted out,
Oh damn.
and then it gave me control, and I'm scared. I don't know what to do.
Oh, the power.
No, it's more like I don't know what to do.
Unlimited power.
I saw it in the corner, and I was like, why? Why me?
I swear, the first time he gave me control, I started laughing maniacally. It was hilarious.
Just trying to draw.
How's everybody's night going?
Boring.
I got the second vaccine today and I'm like hitting a wall.
Oh, damn. When I got my second vaccine, my arm was so sore. I just straight took a nap, and then after that, I was fine.
Yeah, like my arm is super sore. I'm like debating whether I should stay in class because I'm just so exhausted for some reason.
Yeah, it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, thank you, Kalina. Okay, thank you, Kalina. So before I was interrupted, I think the comment I want to say is like, I always like to create a version of the inspiration, right? And looking at your inspiration, it's very typographic, right? So it's shape and typography. And so for me, I'm thinking, oh, well, let's see it. Let's see the typography carry out that much more. So before you go graphic, I know you want to go graphic, and that's important. Typography is also graphic as well, right? It takes a bit more control, and it's and when you're kind of starting out a little bit, it can be a little intimidating because you're like, "Whoa, like how do I, and where do we go with it a little bit, right? So I would literally is literally kind of get a typographic version of that of your package first. So just start typographically. Hey, I'm going to use well, do you know what font you're selecting? Like what's modern font or sans serif you feel like you want to go with? Is your favorite? Is there anything that's sort of standing out for you right now?
At the moment, not quite. I do have a few of them. If I had to choose between, let me see. If I had to choose between a couple, probably between these two.
Okay. Now, in packaging, I would also wonder, is there a bold version of that by any chance? Because part of me really would love to see something like that in its bold format as sort of a comparison. But if those two fonts are, what are those two fonts identified as? Trying to see what they are. Is one of them like a Futura, or is it I?
So the first one,
Kandara Light.
and
Okay.
then the other one is
Corbel. Okay. So for those two, what I would do is to create a contrast of sizes using the same font, contrast of weights, if that makes sense. So if you would look at your packaging that you reference, there's a small name, big name, bold, 2 columns, small, if that makes sense, right? So, and if you zoom out of your of your screen there for a second, and I'll try to annotate it really quick. But basically, the way I see it is like, okay, you're gonna take one of those fonts and you're gonna say to yourself, all right, I'm going to use the light and the bold versions of it. Okay. And you'll put, just to start off as one version, like, NORS or the units, let's say, obviously underneath that in big bold is going to be like chicken bouillon, right? And then I think there's like a number of units underneath that, right? And then maybe whatever that like symbol is for organic, there's like a certain graphic there that's sort of an indicator. So and it's really rough because I'm not putting it in the center and things like that, right? What I would do is I would do a typographic version. So it would be chicken bouillon big, maybe the number of units or packets a little bit small up here towards the top, right? And then underneath that is the net weight or number of ounces per that. And then the sort of like the health guidance logo underneath it, right? And I would do just a typographic version of that, right? Just to start, just to see what looks typographically, visually interesting without a graphic, okay? Now that is going to help you determine what the next one's going to look like and whether or not, and I know it's going to look like really rough on my screen here, and whether or not you want to add in or move the text to the side. So perhaps you're going to have a graphic or some type of icon of like your chicken on the left here, but then you're going to flush right your type somewhere there, and maybe like the logo shows up towards the bottom there. Does that kind of make sense a little bit? Yeah. So what you're doing is kind of like you're saying, okay, I just started out with a typographic version just to see what works graphically. And then from there, you're going to sort of add in and do a second version, like literally copy and paste. And maybe you'll put a graphic on the left, or maybe the graphic goes onto the right. And then you have your typography, like the small typography, the name of the product, and like your secondary materials and graphics information's there on the left. Does that kind of make sense a little bit? Yeah. So you're doing variations of your type, but you're adding a graphic to it, if that makes sense. Okay. So you're kind of evolving it. So I would do a typographic single version of that. And the top one will be like a light, and then the bottom one will be the font in bold perhaps, and maybe the bottom graphic will be a light version of it. So you have contrasting weights, light or thin, bold for the bottom, right? To show contrasting weights, because technically that's contrasting weight is technically contrasting sizes, right? Thin shaped letters, bold shaped letters. Does that kind of make sense a little bit there? Yeah. Okay. And I would do that. I would do a typographic version, and then I would do sort of like a minimalist version underneath that to kind of carry it out, if that makes sense. Okay. And let's just start there. And then that way we can kind of start it off and go in that direction. Okay. Does that kind of help a little bit in terms of like understanding?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, perfect. And then we'll start there, and then we'll review it for next week to see what that looks like. Okay. And I'm just make a couple of notes here really quick. Okay. And then we'll go from there. When you add the drawing, then let's see what it looks like with a sort of like a solid character or solid silhouette of the chicken, maybe filled in or like filled in as a solid black type. And then we'll kind of do a comparison. I have a feeling it might be black, or I have a feeling it might be green, but like a filled in instead of an outline. So it's basically kind of like starting off minimalist, but you're adding like a silhouette to kind of like add to the graphic just a little bit more, if that helps. Okay. So I would go in that direction, and I think that'll kind of help the piece just to get started, so we know exactly where like everything's going and where we want to go with it. I always like to start with my inspiration and kind of start there, and then start to make assessments moving forward. Okay. Okay, very cool. Sounds good. All right, very cool. So thanks for sharing that. We'll get you set up. Okay. Okay, so really quick, guys. And in case there's any additional questions, I do have to make a quick run, okay? So if there's questions or issues, please shoot me a quick email. I just wanted to spend at least an hour just to kind of check in and see if anyone has any questions. But for right now, is everyone okay with where they're at and just using the time tonight to work asynchronously? You're cool, everything's set, perfect, no other questions, right? Okay, wonderful. So then I'm gonna jump out, and then if there's anything, please email me. It goes like a text message to me and I'll jump right back in. But if there's any other questions, you do not have to be online unless you want to talk to one another and support one another. But if you're good, then you can totally log off and go and work asynchronously this evening. But if you want to have questions, share comments with any of your classmates, feel free to stay in the classroom. It'll be open obviously until 9:30 there. Okay. All right. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. We'll see you on Tuesday of next week. Put in that time. And again, that way you can kind of shoot it over for me. Okay, Jonathan, shoot me an email, Jonathan, about your situation. Send me your student ID number, okay? And I will send this to the dean first thing tomorrow morning, okay? And then we'll get you reactivated for it. So want to make sure that that's looking okay. Awesome, I see that. Sounds good. All right, guys, we will see you then. Okay, and if you, again, stick around if you feel like you want to support one another, but if you're okay, then feel free to work asynchronously and you can log out of the classroom for this evening. Okay, wonderful. All right, guys, we'll see you then. I'll catch you next week.